How's it going today, guys? Today I want to talk about Capcom wanting to revive dormant IPs, while also discussing some concerns I have about this, but also discussing some potential that this could lead into if Capcom decides to follow through with this decision. So I want to get right into this topic by bringing up the concerns that I have. I like that Capcom wants to revive dormant IPs so that way we don't just see Resident Evil, Street Fighter, and Monster Hunter, but what concerns me is how these revivals would be handled. Would the quality of these revivals turn out similarly to games like DMC, Devil May Cry, Dead Rising 4, and even Resident Evil 7, or would they be rather decent games, if not on par with games that Capcom released back in the 90s and early 2000s? Who would be involved with these projects? We know that Capcom will no longer outsource to third-party game developers, especially since it was the reason why the company was restructured, so it would have to be someone in-house. However, there's still an issue of having certain in-house devs working on some of those IPs who could potentially make them subpar games overall. An example of this would be Masachika Kawada. He's worked on various Capcom titles, but in recent years he's been delivering some games that were either average or just very dull, such as Resident Evil Revelations, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, and the recent Umbrella Corps. Yet despite delivering such poor products, he's able to work on Resident Evil 7. If we go by his recent track record along with how the game has just been turning out as more information is revealed on the game, it wouldn't be too surprising if the game was just average, if not mediocre, or just downright bad. So you wouldn't want to bring someone like that to work on revitalizing a dormant IP if there's a risk of them making that IP rather dull. However, I digress. There's also a concern of how much development time these games would get. While games such as Resident Evil 5 and Devil May Cry 4 are great games, if you look into the development history of both, especially within the concepts, you can see that they would have been drastically different games if they had the proper amount of development time. That said, those were the concerns that I have regarding this topic. Now I'd like to discuss the potential of this being a very good decision for Capcom. As mentioned earlier, I'm glad that Capcom wants to revitalize IP so that way we don't just get Resident Evil, Street Fighter, and Monster Hunter, because the amount of IPs that Capcom has under their belt is so vast that there's a lot to choose from as far as revitalization is concerned. Personally, some of the games that I'd like to see make a comeback are as follows: Devil May Cry, Onimusha, Chaos Legion, and Dino Crisis, just to name a few. I'm completely aware of the fact that fans of Capcom would also like to see games like Mega Man, Okami, Beautiful Joe, God Hand, and etc. to come back in full force, and I would have to agree with them. Seeing some of those games making a return would ultimately pique more interest than seeing the same 3 IPs getting constant support that some of these dormant IPs never received when they were relevant. Now, getting into the potential that this could lead into for Capcom if they follow through with this, well, I believe that at this rate, it would be the only way they could win the trust back of their fans. Of course, this would all depend on how they would handle these projects, but if they do right by the fans, then there shouldn't be anything to worry about. I would also like to think that reviving these IPs could mean vastly improved gameplay, some risk-taking, as well as exploring some mechanics that might not have been experimented with back in the PS2 era. Not to mention, if there are devs working on these IPs they haven't touched in several years, there's a possibility that more care is put into the development of these games, resulting in a higher quality product. With that all said and done, I'd like to know what you think on the subject. Do you have any concerns, or do you think Capcom will bring back IPs in full force? Now, I'd like to conclude the video, so if you don't already, you can follow me on Twitter and on Twitch, and I'll see you guys on the next one.